By now, I like to think we all know about Guardians of the Galaxy. It was the highest grossing domestic film of last year, and it's still talked about to this day. What I've always wondered is why is it so popular? What in the film, or even around the film, has made it this phenomenon? Well, I'm here to analyze and hopefully answer this question. Let's get started. I think most people forget that when Guardians was coming out, most did not have much faith in the film. It was a bizarre choice for Marvel to make a movie based on an essentially unheard of comic book that was only known because of Rocket Raccoon. I mean, they still had to make a Mark Ruffalo Hulk movie, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man. There was literally thousands of other choices. Why Guardians of the Galaxy? When they announced the cast and crew, the movie became even more interesting. Wait. You hired the guy who made Slither, Super, and PG porn to direct your big budget superhero movie? Your leading actors are the fat guy from Parks and Rec, the skinny lady from Avatar, and an MMA fighter? And your biggest name actors are doing voices, with the biggest name, Vin Diesel, saying 3 words the entire time? At this point, Guardians was either going to be a great film or a terrible one. But no one thought it would be overly successful. It was a risk among risk, and the world was waiting to see how it would fare. The marketing did a great job, making fun of itself and famously using Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede, which became an icon of the movie. But trailers lie, so it was up to the movie to make the property a success. While playing up the comedy and weirder aspects of the film before it came out were great choices, the real success of Guardians of the Galaxy lies in the film itself. The movie is a different beast than most summer blockbusters that come out these days, acting more as the goofier cousin of Star Wars than a general Marvel film. There's not been a space opera style, fun yet smart, big budgeted sci-fi movie since episode 3 back in 2005, and even then that movie was just below average. Audiences hadn't seen that type of movie in almost a decade, so no one was really clamoring for it. But Marvel decided to take the plunge and dedicate to this style of film. The world Guardians creates feels huge, full of life and history just waiting to be explored. When they travel to nowhere, they give the history of the mining planet that's actually the head of a celestial being that died millions of years ago. The universe now harvests the god's organs and tissues to sell and produce materials. That is fascinating and, at least to me, extremely unique. Yet they don't focus on it too much. They explain why the planet is cool and interesting, then get right back to the mission at hand. It leaves plenty of room to explore and speculate, leaving the audience with a feeling of, well, what else is out there? And that's just the stuff they do explain. Who the f*** is Groot, and where'd he come from? What species is that guy who steals the Walkman in the prison? The one with the giant eyes and who dances in deleted scenes? And how the hell can those ships at the end form a giant shield net thing? That sense of wonder and discovery is present all throughout the movie, but it rarely calls attention to itself, since every character already knows how this world works and what's in it. We only get explanations when exposed to things most characters would not know about, like the Infinity Stone orb. This makes Guardians almost infinitely rewatchable. There's always some new gadget or detail to find, similar to watching Star Wars or Star Trek. On a more crowd-pleasing level, Guardians is also popular due to its comedy. James Gunn is a comedic director. He has yet to make a movie that isn't funny. Slither is a horror comedy, Super is a darkly realistic comedy, and Tromeo and Juliet, well, just read the title. So giving him free reign to write a script for a PG-13 space opera where all but one of your main cast members is an alien was bound to have some funny moments. That's why Marvel hired him, to not take this weird movie so seriously that it would seem silly, but to be serious enough to make the characters sympathetic and likable. What we got was a surprisingly funny movie. Surprising in that there's more punchlines than punches. Guardians is like the comedies of old, opting for written jokes and perfect delivery rather than improv. The jokes are mostly silly and slapsticky, with some of the best lines coming from the more wacky characters like Rocky or the serious to a fault Drax. Yet the humor never goes too lowbrow or broad. There's never any fart jokes or gross out humor. There are rarely any pratfalls, and the few there are work extremely well, like when Star-Lord drops the orb to mean the Collector. The movie is all about messing with expectations. Just look at the emotional and serious opening juxtaposed by Redbone's "Come and Get Your Love." That's still one of the most memorable and funny scenes in film, specifically because putting a recognizable Poppy song directly after 5 minutes of dark, sad imagery is funny and tension relieving. The film does this multiple times throughout its over 2-hour run, never getting less funny or surprising. These moments stick in people's minds, meaning they'll tell their friends about these funny moments or leave them in suspense with a well-placed, "Oh, I shouldn't say any more, you should just see the movie." To sum up that stream of consciousness, this movie is funnier than people thought it would be. Now, let's talk about the other aspect that sticks in people's heads, the soundtrack. From the minute I heard Come and Get Your Love, I knew this was going to be the movie for me. I'm a die-hard lover of pop music from the 60s to the 80s, so to have a blockbuster movie with a Tarantino-esque soundtrack was awesome to hear. What I didn't expect was everyone else to fall in love with it. The reason the songs work so well is because they fit the lighthearted tone. This isn't surprising since many scenes were written with these songs in mind. What makes the music stand out is that it sounds nothing like someone would expect from a modern day sci-fi movie. Audiences expect electronica or dubstep with an Inception wham put in for good measure. The music is also the opposite of what was playing on the radio in 2014. Last year is basically considered a pretty lackluster year for pop music, with very few standouts or just plain good songs. Guardians came out during a dry spell for music, which is why it became the biggest album of the year until T Swifty had to come in and release a new pop album. When I told my mom about the success the soundtrack had, she said something that really resonated with me. She said, "That just goes to show you how great those old songs are, and how influential they still are after all these years. Maybe the music listening public isn't entirely doomed." But everything I've looked at so far has been on the base level of the film. What about the nitty-gritty? What about the characters? Well, they aren't exactly new. Star-Lord is Han Solo, Gamora is Xena, Rocket is Jane, etc. But they are well developed in subtle ways. Rocket, for example, is described as an experimental abomination. The characters constantly call him rodent or pest, and we even get some shots of his physical scars. This makes his break down the bar not only make sense, but it's also emotional to see this cocky, funny, likable character brought down to such a vulnerable point. Star-Lord is instantly likable through the opening scene, which the audience is constantly yet quietly reminded of by the soundtrack. The opening scene is also great at establishing how capable he is, even if he's silly. When he enters the ruins and starts to mess around to the song, he does wacky but impressive things. He expertly grabs an attacking alien lizard thing and then uses it as a microphone, for example. It's all there to show how adjusted he is to the space world and explains how he can be competent yet a f*** up at the same time. These characters are also given memorable moments, which Marvel showed they know how to do with the Avengers. Everyone has a golden line of dialogue. Everyone has an instant classic scene. Some even have both. Either way, each character is given something to do at some time, whether it be development or looking awesome. All of these elements come together and make a great movie. I would honestly put this with other classic blockbusters like Star Wars or The Avengers. And I think it's going to be one of those movies that today's generation will show to newer ones to let them know what life was like. Let them see what good movies used to be. And this leads me to my final point. Guardians is one of the few popular things not to get annoying. For the past few years, something in pop culture that was once good, sometimes even great, has been ruined by oversaturation, to the point where I don't want to ever experience them again. Things like The Kick is a Lie, Daft Punk's Get Lucky, and Frozen, which is still annoyingly popular 2 years after its release. I personally have yet to get oversaturated with Guardians of the Galaxy, but why? I have tons upon tons of friends who rave about the film. I have one who's seen it about 9 times and claims it's the best movie ever made. I know of many people who claim it's the greatest movie of the year. You hear the soundtrack all the time, but it never gets old. While I may not think that the movie is the best thing ever made in the history of film, I still think it deserves the praise it gets. It is an excellent movie that needs all the goodwill it gets, so hopefully studios will see what makes a great blockbuster and will make some that take risks or maybe even remain self-contained. As far as I can see, Guardians of the Galaxy may be one of the most important movies to come out in the past decade, and will be remembered as such for a long time to come.